The portrayal of war in epic poems is always well, most epic poems in one way or another are about war. They just are. It is epic poems by definition are about the founding of civilizations generally, and that almost always happens as a result of some wars. So you tend to get good guys, bad guys, heroes and monsters fighting against one another, and then in the end, the good guys win, and a glorious age is ushered in that founds their civilization and embeds the values personified by those heroes in the culture for the rest of time. That's the basics of epic poetry. The reality of the reality of war, as it is expressed in epic poetry, is often a little underwhelming, I find. Just me. But it can be a bit of a slog to get through. There are innumerable fight scenes. There are innumerable people who step up, declare, their undying fealty to the cause, and get opposed by another hero declaring his own undying fealty to his own cause, and then they fight. And then one or the other of them is defeated, or perhaps at times saved by the gods, depending on the tradition, and it just goes on and on and on. That can be a bit tough for particularly modern Western audiences to get through. But when you understand the basic rhythm of how that works, you can start to appreciate it a little bit more. And you can start to say that, okay, if that's the norm, what can I learn by looking at those little moments that seem individualized, that seem different, that seems particular? And what is the relationship between the norm and the particular in this particular example? All of these questions start to recur, and it is all kind of meta-literary would be the term, where we're thinking more about the way things are being told to us versus what we're being told. But it is I would say, a very significant part of any reading, is to be able to understand, like, okay, now they're doing this to me. It doesn't really matter particularly what the specifics are. In the example of the Mahābhārata, we have an enormous battlefield in Kurukshetra, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of not just grunt soldiers, but princes, glorious aristocratic heroes. This is not just, anonymous bad guys or good guys fighting it out and dying in the beaches and you move on. This is every individual has a kind of inherent value. And think about that as well as you're reading. If you're told a name, that person generally has value. When you're watching a movie and you see, the hero charging into the enemy encampment, and there are lots of explosions going on and bodies flying everywhere, those people don't have names. Those are just bodies, stuntmen, or, perhaps dummy bodies, but we don't care about them. We have no emotional investment in them. But when you're told a name, that conveys a certain significance, a certain human value. And sometimes we even get backstories for that person. One of Homer's favorite moves in describing battles in the Iliad is to have a hero step forward in battle. And then you get a long explanation while he's sitting there, supposedly, about to charge in. You get a long explanation of who he is, what his background is, what his history is, who his grandfather is, what his grandfather's background was. All of this stuff before the fight, so that we get invested in the hero. We see an awful lot of that here. The value of this particular, the Mahābhārata's particular form, is that it is so long that we already know in great detail a great number of the heroes. We know their stories, we know their backgrounds, so that we can track them a little bit more efficiently in the process of this grand tableau of the war. But watching how each moment in these scenes plays out, I think is valuable. Now, I want to take a look at the the scenes conveying the fall of Bhishma, who is essentially the grandfather figure to all of these people. He is he's the big daddy. And we have just come from some sequences where he shows himself not as a grandfather, not as a old man enfeebled or weakened, but as this glorious warrior, very strong, very virile, very in command of himself and everything around him. He is a feared warrior. He is a contentious hero to be accounted for. So this is warmed up with us. This is like, oh, okay, Bhishma, he's not an old man. He's, he is the stud. He is the man. And as we move into inexorably his demise, and we're getting little suggestions throughout, them just sort of putting those ideas out that death is coming, we can start to see the mechanism that is at play in the poem broadly. Arjuna led the Pandavas in aiming a storm of arrows at where the Kauravas were least well protected. Many thousands were cut down and others put to fight, scattering randomly across the field. Duryodhana, in great distress, cried out, "Bhishma, my troops are flying like headless birds despite your skill. You are their only hope." "Listen," said Bhishma, "I made you a promise that I would kill 10,000 Pandava men every day. This I have done. Today, either I myself will die in battle, or I will slaughter the brave sons of Pandu. Either way, I will discharge my debt for the food I have consumed at your expense." Simple little passage right there, really significant. First of all, perhaps a little exaggerated, perhaps a little hyperbolic would be the literary term. 10,000 Pandava men every day. That seems a little extraordinary. Remember, these are not automatic weapons. These are not cluster bombs. This is bow and arrow. 10,000? I don't know. When you hear stuff like that, there are a couple of reflections that you can have there. Number one, these are not normal men. These are heroes. This is an age of heroes in most epic constructions. So people can do more extraordinary things. It's exactly like in the Hebrew Bible when we're told that Noah lives for like 900 years or something like that. The people who exist in this epic context are not ordinary human beings. Plus, this is not an ordinary human being because he is an aristocrat. He is the head of the House of Bharata. He is a superhero in his own right as an aristocrat. So we're already told that. But think also of the people who might not be aristocrats who might come across this text. Like, let's say, oh, I don't know, I'm not making any assumptions about you, but us. I have no particular pride in being an aristocrat, certainly not of the House of Bharata. So what is my reaction? Well, if it is an obvious exaggeration, how am I to take any of the rest of the stuff that might seem equally incredible, equally non-credible in this story? So it suddenly distances me a little bit from the text. It suddenly pushes me back and says, well, remember, it's all just a story. It's all just make-believe. That little toggling is happening there. But of course, also you have Duryodhana freaking out. He's such a ninny. In great distress, cried out, Bhishma, my troops are flying like headless birds. His troops then are a reflection of himself, because he is chaos. He is always freaking out. He is always having an emotional outburst of one thing or another. So fleeing like headless birds, that is the kind of chaos that you would expect of Duryodhana. So Duryodhana is very much a reflection of his troops, who are very much a reflection of him. So he is the personification of that element of the war. And the sense of honor, that in that sort of troubling last line, that sense of equanimity. Either way, I will discharge my debt for the food I have consumed at your expense. I could die or I could not. It's okay with me either way, but I want it, either way, my books are squared, essentially. And I have done my duty. I have fulfilled the obligations of my role in society. Little things that, okay, we can start to connect those to other things that we have read in this poem. Bhishma renewed his attack like one inspired, like one who had cast off his life already. The arc of his bow was a perfect circle. He shone, resplendent as a smokeless flame, seeming to be everywhere at once, dazzling all who saw him. Hundreds and thousands of the Panchalas, led by Drupada, fought their last fight. Elephants and horses by the thousands were reduced to carcasses. Arjuna advanced towards Bhishma, Sikandin in front of him, but then was stopped by Dushana. They fought. Your son. Your son. We're reminded of the teller in this. This is somebody telling a story in a court. This is the poem reminding us that this is all a story. This is another meta moment where we're being told, okay, remember, there is a perspective here. This is not objective truth that is being revealed. This is somebody telling a story. Those hints keep coming, and we are reminded this is not necessarily all true. This is not necessarily some grand truth. This is a perspective within a much larger manifestation of reality that maybe we have imperfect grasp of. So be wary. Your son was a worthy match for Arjuna. Both men are great chariot warriors, and at first Dushana held back the Pandava as a cliff might stand against the raging sea. He wounded the son of Kunti in his head. Furious, Arjuna split your son's bow, then hit him with a torrent of sharp arrows. Dushana fought like a true hero despite his many wounds, but Arjuna beat him back, and at last he retreated to help protect the patriarch's chariot. It's thrilling. It is sweeping. It is a big cinematic moment. But think of that. Think of big cinematic moments that sweep you along. When you're watching a movie, an action sequence, which is what this is full of color. It is full of activity. Lots of things going on in the screen. Lots of emotional attachment. The music tends to pump up. There's not a lot of talking. There's not a lot of thought going on. It's just engrossing you lustfully along. Oh, what's going to happen? Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. That is your basic action movie mode. That is your basic superhero mode. And these are, in their way, superheroes. It is thrilling. It is transporting. It is seductive. But still, in the middle of it, we had that, and your son, that reminder that, no, it's all fake. Don't get too caught up in it. Don't get too transported. Don't lose your reason. Don't lose your sense of calm, your sense of inner equanimity. The ability to do that, the ability to hold on to your composure. That's what this poem is largely celebrating. So even in the thrill of battle, in the mess that is action, an emotional attachment to what is going on in front of you, even in that, you have to be careful. You have to hold back, keep your head about you, and go about your duty. So you see how suddenly we are all drafted into this war. Because everybody out there is in the middle of it even more than we are. If they can keep their composure, if they can hold their head in one place, then they are worthy. If they get caught up in the activity, like the headless birds of Duryodhana, then all is lost. So you have to monitor your own reaction as you go along. If you find yourself getting swept up, be very, very careful. Those are the moments that you're vulnerable because you've lost your mind, quite literally. The day wore on. There were many duels between opposing heroes. Abhimanyu, dark like his uncle, racial considerations, tall as a shala tree, launched a fierce assault on Duryodhana. Nakula did battle with Vikarna as two warriors fighting as furiously as two bulls horn-locked over a herd of cows. Bhima fought with Shalya and with many valiant heroes in Duryodhana's force. His roars terrified the troops. Nice little montage of many scenes. I suspect, knowing that this is, of course, a great abridgment, I suspect that each one of those little incidents that are referenced here are perhaps their own scenes in the original. So again, that is telling me that this is a story. This is another level of storytelling that is happening. So I need to remember, like, oh, okay, this is a perspective. Don't get too caught up in it. This is somebody going through the mechanisms of telling me a story, and that is great, but I need to remember that by telling me a story, they're using very deliberate strategies for exciting me, for distracting me, for entertaining me, seducing me, and possibly trying to sell me something, trying to make me believe something. So we got to push back a little. But I can't help but look also at that first line. The day wore on. Oh, good God. The passage of time. The relentlessness of time. And the conspicuousness of time reflected in that. And with that, I can't help but reflect back on all the other battles that have taken place. before this scene, that will take place after this scene, and they all essentially hit the same marks. They all essentially sound the same. They become repetitive. So when you're reading it and you're coming, okay, another battle. Okay, another hero steps forth. Okay, another anti-hero, opposition figure steps forth. And they have a great battle. And then reinforcements get sent in. And it's just the same thing again and again and again and again. Almost as if it's a kind of eternal recurrence. Almost as if no progress ever gets made. Now this guy is up. Now that guy is up. Now this guy is up again. And then that guy is up again. The sides just go back and forth. Nothing actually develops. Well, you can look at that a couple of ways. Number one, I would say the more modern way would be to say that, well, yeah, war is kind of pointless, ultimately. And this is a critique pointing that out. Boundaries, borders, they get traded back and forth. Territory is won and lost. Heroes are killed and then other heroes step in to take their place. It's all the same. Maybe that's what this is doing. The fact that the time just kind of clicks on impassively. All this is going on, but yeah, the sun's getting a little bit high in the horizon. The sun's getting a little low in the horizon. What's really been accomplished? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. Another way of looking at it, if we think back to some of the philosophical, theological, and mythological contexts that we have seen in this poem, is that, well, with a kind of eternal recurrence, the four stages of man, the cyclical nature of time that we have been explicitly told exists in this civilization, all these things are happening at the same time. The Kauravas are always winning at the same time that the Kauravas are always losing. The Pandavas are always winning at the same time that they are always losing. In every instant of time, all time exists. The time when the Kauravas are up, the time when the Pandavas are up. The time when certain heroes are alive, the time when certain heroes are dead. So all the little hints that we get that this hero who seems to be at the moment, and this time Bhishma, at the height of his vitality, at the height of his life force is so strong in that. He is so commanding in that. At the height of that, we are being dropped these little hints that, but he will soon die. But he will soon die. But death is coming. Because it's always there. Those moments always coexist in one another. When Bhishma dies, that is a standout moment. When any of these heroes die, whom we have built up a relationship with over the course of many, many episodes, many, many chapters, that is notable. That is remarkable. We are leaning in at that moment. Like, oh, well, I have been skimming pages up until now, but now, there, that's a development. Everything's been leading to this point. That is progressive, which is something that we in the West especially, definitely we in the modern era, tend to like. Stories have to move somewhere. They have to start at a certain point. They should end at a certain point. We get that effectively from Aristotle. But when this happens, it is curious the way it is portrayed. He is annihilated in a way, and yet he still lives on. Now Bhishma, as if in a final gesture, as if he could not bring himself to die passively, despite his resolution, hurled a spear at Arjuna, who blocked it and cut it in 3 pieces. The old warrior took up a sword and gold-edged shield and started to climb down from his chariot. Arjuna smashed the shield to fragments. Then it seemed that the entire army of the Pandavas was shouting joyfully and vengefully, "Throw him down! Capture him! Cut him to pieces!" Shooting at Bhishma an arrow shower so dense that soon his body was entirely hidden by arrows sticking out at every angle. His chariot was awash in blood. He staggered, he toppled over, headlong to the ground. His head looked toward the east, and as he fell, the earth shook, and everyone who saw him screamed, "Bhishma the Invincible has fallen." Trumpets and conches blared from your nephew's side. It is a heroic fall, but it comes as a kind of ecstasy, as if in a final gesture, as if he could not bring himself to die passively. He almost invites the arrows, and they are not just, he gets shot once and falls. It is a arrow shower so dense that soon his body was entirely hidden by arrows sticking out at every angle. That's what it takes to bring down such a great hero. That's what it takes to bring down such a king. But even in that, he is active and not passive. Remember, one of the critiques of Yudhishthira is that he is often very passive as a leader. He accepts too much. So his journey is about finding that balance. Here we have Bhishma, in the moment when he's falling, never being more alive. And still, that last line, after this emotional investment of this moment, when you see this hero who has seemed so vital throughout the poem, it's heartbreaking. We're there. We're emotionally invested. Trumpets and conches blared from your nephew's side. That is the storyteller at this level telling us that this is a story. Might be true, might not, but it's a perspective. So we are disquieted from being that invested. Seeing him fall, the hearts of everyone lurched with him. His body did not touch the earth, but was suspended as if on a bed by his exoskeleton of arrows. So he has fallen. He's not dead. He is resting, but he's resting on arrows that are simultaneously killing him. It is a curious image of all things at once. We are led through this this at times heartbreaking and excruciating scene of suffering, physical suffering, the experience of physical life, and yet at the same time also admiring his focus on his duty. He is dying as a hero. He is dying as a practitioner of Dharma. He is dying as an exemplar of Dharma for everybody around to watch. And he invites up these other, he invites up everybody. Everybody gathers around him. They stop fighting and they gather around him to pay him respect. The Pandavas too. They come to him, and Arjuna, who shot the arrows that killed him, comes up and pays respect. The performance of honor, the performance of your duty to demonstrate honor, to live honor, is so important in this moment, because this is a moment of great physical horror, but at the same time, spiritual exaltation. You get all these things turned around in that moment. Warriors on both sides laid down their weapons and clustered around Bhishma. He greeted them, then asked that a headrest be found for him. His head was hanging down uncomfortably. Many fine, luxurious pillows were brought, but he refused them all. These are too soft. I need a pillow for a hero's head. Arjuna, find me something suitable. Arjuna took up his bow, Gandhava, consecrated it, and shot 3 arrows into the ground at just the right height to hold up Bhishma's head. The patriarch was pleased. This is a pillow for a warrior. This is how a fallen Kshatriya should be supported on the field of battle. I will rest until the sun is journeying towards the north after the winter solstice. Then I will relinquish my last breath. He is deciding. He is not a victim. He is, as we're told, being very active, not passive in his own demise. And he's kind of orchestrating it. And at the same time, he accepts the physical pain of essentially lying on arrows that are piercing his flesh at every instant, and even asks for more. And when people try and make him comfortable, physically comfortable, he says, no, that's not right. That's not appropriate. So he calls over Arjuna, and Arjuna knows what he needs. Arjuna, as a fellow hero, a fellow warrior, Kshatriya, knows what he needs, knows the proper thing to do in this moment. And it has nothing to do with physical comfort. It has to do with what is necessary within this situation. What is the duty that respects the fallen, the duty on the winners. These moments stand out. These moments are significant. These moments are not just, and then this one died, and then that one died, and then this happened, and then that happened. And you can go through the book and find the deaths that are more significant. Karna's is particularly heartbreaking. And these moments stand out, and we can say, wow, 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 that's what I expect. But still, those moments always come kind of in a pattern. After a furious battle, after an escalating battle, after both sides give and take and surrender and achieve conquests, it ends with a hero's death. And what is achieved in that? It is always the same cycle that ends at a certain point. That certain point then ushers in the next point, which is the cyclical nature of battle, the cyclical nature of life. Remember that the 4 stages of man ends with a kind of total corruption that then gives birth to something new, something fresh, a reincarnation of life. So that patterning is significant. It's not as involving as following a story the way we like stories to be in our Hollywood-infused imaginations, where there is progression, where things change, things develop. And you can make an argument, and many scholars have, that these scenes, these episodes, these sequences are very artificial. You know, the Bhishma, okay, aside from the 10,000 Pandavas that he kills in a single day, and him just sort of swaggering and saying all of that as a, you know, as a very old man at this time, you can put all that aside. There is no strategy being executed by either army. There are no generals necessarily planning anything, sitting in the rear, doing what generals do and saying, okay, this group go over there and try and outflank them, and this group go over there and try and get here and distract them. There's none of that. There is only individuals going and fighting. And that is not very realistic. It never has been in the history of warfare. But if you just step back from it a little and say that, well, okay, that's a convention that the storytellers here are leaning on. But that sense of repetition, that sense of non-progression, when you talk to soldiers, when you talk to people who have been in war situations, that is very familiar. That sense of what is it all for if we're not really achieving anything. That is very realistic. And the endless, today we get up and we fight, tomorrow we get up and we fight, today we gave back some territory, tomorrow we win back that same territory, and the day after that we'll probably lose it again. That sense, modern soldiers respond to. And a lot of these epic poems, the Iliad, in this mode, become very useful in modern society by being ways that soldiers coming back from war situations with perhaps a little PTSD going on, they can find a way, an objective way of dealing with their own emotional baggage, their own concerns, their own crises, their own confusion, by seeing other people do it and seeing it in a safe space of art, of culture, or even of history, where, okay, that's those people going through it. And I know it's just those people going through it because I hear all these storytellers coming in and telling me that those people were doing it, and I can deal with that. When it starts to sweep me up into it, then my heart starts racing, and oh my God, the last time I felt my heart racing this much, I saw all my friends get killed by a grenade. But keeping you in that space where you're touching on the thrill of it, the fear of it, the emotional investment of it, but still reminding you to pull back from it, that is a way of dealing with this as a kind of therapy. Hopefully, in the modern age, very few people have to go through that and use these works like that. But that is a persistent tool that is being used by that segment of society. For our purposes, we can see it from a more universal perspective. We have all been caught up in emotional moments in life. We have all been caught up with conflicts and fights and grand battles that really don't mean that much at all. But maintaining that perspective, maintaining that equilibrium is often the key to any sort of resolution. So from this sequence, from this very beefy chunk of this poem, we can start to find our own significance. we can start to find a way of dealing with our own problems. We can start to find, if we are young princes and princesses being raised to lead great civilizations, we can find analogs and ways of resolving conflicts or pursuing conflicts as need be. Or we can just train our own particular perspective in life to see through what's really happening in any given situation. And it is often not all the Sturm and Drang on the screen or on the page or all the stuff that's going on, but it is very frequently our own reaction to it that matters.